This past month, I hit another milestone with my car. I drive a Mitsubishi Lancer, and I hit a milestone of going, for the first time in my life, going around the world twice in a row without a car accident. I used to have fender benders all the time, and I've totaled 2 cars, and this one has gone 2 circumferences around the earth, which is about 50,000 miles, without an accident. So, but in recent times I've had a few close calls, and I want to make a video to remind myself of what can go wrong if I don't pay attention, and to remind other people out there of my stupid mistakes in the past. Let me start by talking about an accident I got into my most recent accident 2 years ago, which I had in a Honda Accord, which was totaled. I had been driving in downtown Seattle back to downtown Bellevue, and I had started to daydream. You know, it's a very routine drive. It's kind of funny because I drive really dangerous drives quite often. Sometimes I go home to my family. They're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I drive through the Rocky Mountains, and I think it's such a dangerous drive. Or that time when I went to Mexico and I drove through downtown LA, and then I drove into downtown Tijuana. Those are pretty dangerous drives, but I prep myself. You know, I know I'm doing something dangerous. I'm going into a war zone, and I do just fine. It's when I go into my backyard that all sorts of trouble comes up. Anyways, I started daydreaming. The reason I had started daydreaming was that around that time I started to get very busy with something else, and I didn't have much time to write computer games, which is my passion, and I started to worry about what would happen if I were to die. Who's going to take over my computer games, because there's a lot of great ideas that I don't want to go with me to the grave. And I started thinking about how the reason I had broken up with my ex-girlfriend is that she wanted children. And I started to think about, oh my god, it would have been nice if we had children and I taught my children how to write computer games so they can continue my legacy. And it was around that time that traffic in front of me slowed down, and I couldn't slow down fast enough. And I tried to pull over to the shoulder, but there was already somebody in the shoulder. I think that somebody in the shoulder was having car trouble, and kaboom. And so it was totaled. And I didn't drive for 8 months after that. I was pretty scared of driving after that. I would have nightmares about driving and not knowing what to do, and it was that. And then 8 months later I got this Mitsubishi Lancer, and I made it a goal to go around the world just once without even a fender bender. And I remember I would be looking at my odometer. Let me see if I can get it up. I'd be looking at the odometer and thinking about what percentage of the way I had gone without the accident. And you know, on a good day, if I was on a road trip, I could do 1 or 2% of that goal. Well, most of the time it was less than 1% a day. But I took it in stride that I was making progress, and I didn't have the accident. See, one of the first things I learned to do when I got the car was every trip I take, just tell myself, go this one trip without an accident. See, if I tell myself to go one trip without an accident, it seems very much reachable. If I tell myself to go 1 year, or 2 years, or even a month, or I tell myself to go around the world without an accident, or I tell myself to go the rest of my life without an accident, I can get very overwhelmed and just throw in the towel. But if it's just one trip, or better yet, if it's a long trip, to break it up, you know, make it to Missoula without an accident today, you know, and then when I get to Missoula, maybe think about Buffalo, Wyoming. You know, if I break it up like that, it's very doable. You know, it'd be kind of embarrassing to not be able to drive from Missoula to Buffalo without an accident, or from Buffalo to, I don't know, Chicago without an accident. If you can't do that, that's kind of embarrassing, right? But if you make it go the rest of your life without an accident, I think a lot of people would throw in the towel. Nobody's going to bet their life on that, for sure. I mean, some people might get lucky, so I learned to break it up. And it's kind of funny because one time I had, well, 2 things. One thing is to tell myself when I get in the car and start the engine, you know, go this one trip without an accident. And 2, when I get to where I'm going, to congratulate myself Although it's kind of funny because one time I had made it into the parking lot where I work and congratulated myself for not having the accident. And then as I walked from my car to the door, I almost got hit by a car. So I've learned that you can't let your guard down when you're not driving. You know, there are all sorts of mistakes that one can make in their life. Or maybe I don't get hit by a car in the parking lot, but I make a mistake at work and get hurt or something. You gotta learn that on top of the car, there are other things that deserve your attention as well, which was kind of hard for me when I first started to drive because all the anxiety was at the car. And but in recent times, I've had a number of just really confusing situations and misunderstandings and almost getting into accidents on the road. One of the big problems I have is that I live in my car and there's not a whole lot of real estate here. And sometimes as I'm driving, I can't move the stick, or my elbow gets jammed up because there's a lot of stuff in the passenger seat, or something you know, has dropped in the floor and I can't hit the pedals. And I've learned to pay attention to that. It's one of the things you have to pay attention when you live in your car, I guess. The other problem with real estate issues in the car is that I can't install a GPS very easily. I don't have a GPS yet. Part of the reason I don't get a GPS, aside from the problem with not having enough real estate, is that I have a tendency to over-remember good experiences I have when I get lost, and I meet my potential future wife and all that. And I tend to under-remember the times when I got really frustrated getting lost. And so that's why I don't have a GPS at the moment. But if you'll excuse me, because I just realized I don't have enough space to record. I gotta change the disc. Give me a